Today's video is going to be a little bit on an outline of how I've gone about learning Japanese over my entire journey, and a little bit of the approaches and methods that I take for going about learning Japanese. So I've been learning Japanese for about 1.5 years now, and during that time I've learned a lot, I've changed a lot, and I've adjusted a lot of the ways that I've gone about learning. And so within that time, I've been exposed to not only different methods on how to learn Japanese, but also on language learning as a whole. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from learning Japanese, is figuring out how this whole process works. Okay, but first off, why did I start learning Japanese? So, similar to many out there, the reason I started learning Japanese is because of anime. And one anime in specific, ReZero, that poster back there, I started learning Japanese last 2020, somewhere around August. I got motivated to learn Japanese. And so, I started, just like many, without anything on how to learn languages, on how to learn Japanese, and I just looked up the quickest thing on Google, how to learn Japanese, right? And so in the beginning days, what I ran often into were many different conflicting approaches, many different conflicting methods on how to go about learning languages, what app works best, this works better than that, and a lot of it was just confusing to a beginner like me. And so in the beginning, what I ended up doing was just picking one, trying it out, and seeing how that worked. And that happened to be one from a guy named Japanese in a Year. It is a YouTube channel where a guy tracks his Japanese progress over a year. And the method that he implemented was something from Gabriel Weiner's Fluent Forever, which basically utilizes mnemonics for root memorization of like kanji and kanji radicals and stuff like that in order to increase your vocabulary. And so I got really motivated by that, and about 2 months into my study, that's mainly what I was doing, was just doing mnemonics, was doing radicals, and learning Japanese words that way. The first thing kind of what I did was I kind of followed the same thing that he did, look up the general grammar structure of the language, and then I learned Hiragana and Katakana by just brute force, by just writing it down a lot. And honestly, I think writing down the Hiragana and Katakana, I think that is a really good method just for memorizing the kana. Of course, you can do like Anki decks and, applications, like phone applications to learn the kana. There are definitely those out there, and those are really cool. And so whatever you prefer, anything will get you to learning the kana, at least. And so after about 2 months, I kind of got a little bit bored of the method because I was just learning a lot of mnemonics and it took way too long. And happenstance, along this same time, I came across, many of y'all may know, his name is Matt vs. Japan on YouTube. He's a pretty big Japanese language learning YouTuber in the language immersion community. And then I came across a method called AJAT, which is all Japanese all the time. And these two were the main methods and approaches that I kind of still use till now, and continue to influence me on my day-to-day studies. And so Math vs. Japan, he's kind of got something called the MIA, Mass Immersion Approach, or what is more now known as Refold, and then AJAT is Tatsumoto's All Japanese All the Time. And so being introduced to this whole new method, this immerse all of the time, I got exposed to other things such as the input hypothesis, and then the other stuff which is like output versus input. And so I started doing a little bit of research on the core fundamentals, the foundations upon which Refold and AJAT felt like they were being built off, and that was the input hypothesis from Stephen Krashen. So I did a little bit of research on the Stephen Krashen, and I would say that the natural approach, which is what his paper was on, kind of reflects the core concept on how I'm learning Japanese now, and it revolves around a lot of comprehensible input. And so the thing that really stuck out to me was that when you receive enough comprehensible input, or enough input, by receiving enough comprehensible input, you'll have enough to output over time without ever having to actually practice speaking. And to me, that was very enticing. And so it's still very enticing to me nowadays. I believe that it has actually happened, and it has occurred to a smaller extent on my level, as I've had italki conversations and I've had hanayoku conversations where I haven't practiced outputting at all, yet I'm able to convey what I want to say and use vocabulary kind of where I want to describe certain things. Obviously, I'm not perfect and I'm not fluent at any level, but the main idea of getting messages across has been achieved, I think, to a small extent. And so those are kind of the core fundamentals, the core approaches and methods that I've been using to learn Japanese. And I wish I had a little bit more to speak about on that topic, but it's hard because I've just been using a lot of the refold and AJAT methodology to just consume the content that I like to do. And a quick description on kind of the way that I like to do my content is I'll basically find content that I want to immerse in. So say anime, for example, I pick ReZero. I take the anime, I take ReZero, and I watch it. I read the subtitles and I use Japanese subtitles. And basically as it's playing, I'm looking up what the subtitles mean. I'm making flashcards and making the content more comprehensible. So that's a big generalization of the method that I use. And I haven't really switched too much from that general method. Of course, nowadays I'm using visual novels. I've started getting to visual novels, and I think getting more into reading is going to be one of the better things to do, as I think being able to read, you are able to get more content in, you're able to get more vocabulary in, you're able to learn more vocabulary and make more connections by reading. And so with all of those things, it can all kind of be batched into language immersion and reading. And yeah, that's basically a general outline on how I've been going about learning Japanese. I probably could have summed it up to just immerse a lot and read a lot and listen a lot. But I think this kind of gives a little bit more insight onto the way that I went about approaching learning Japanese, and currently the approach that I am still using to learn Japanese. And so I think what I'm going to do next is continue reading and see how far that takes me and adjust based on what I think I want to learn and whatnot. And so that's going to be the end of this video today. And so I just want to make it aware that I am beginning to stream again for my Japanese studies, and I plan on doing weekly streams on Friday nights. So come join me on Friday nights at Pacific Standard Time, so about 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, for how I go about learning Japanese. If you watch this video all the way through, comment down below on how you're learning about Japanese and what you're most excited for in learning Japanese. And as always, I'll see you again in a future video, and good luck with your studies out there.